Well, I had several jobs. One of my jobs was that of analyst. I also was an interrogator and indeed briefed the press when we, the CIA, wanted to circulate disinformation on a particular issue. Disinformation is not necessarily a lie. It may be a half-truth. And we would pick out a journalist.
Then what the f is it? You already know what it is. It's your boy Laid Back with another reaction, another review, another episode. Hey, TikTok, you up to bat? Bah! It's your boy Laid Back. Welcome back to my channel. Hey, two things we gotta do. You gotta hit that subscribe button. I'm drinking this water. You already know what it is, man. You are the prize in 2025. You are the prize in 2025. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the notification bell. Stay up to date with all the videos. We back with another reaction. You feel me? Conspiracy theory. But look, merch just dropped. I'm just saying, the merch is fire. I'm just gonna keep it 100. This is the best design by far. You should cop, man, especially if you the prize this year, for sure. But make sure you tap into that, man. It'll be under the video. But also, make sure you share this with the last person you text in your phone. Also, we still on the goal of getting 1,000 comments, man. I'm hearting every comment, everything. So make sure you drop your comments below. You make it to the end of this one, you a real one for real. So make sure you put that. But let's go ahead and get into this. Fire Squad, what's popping? Let's get it.
I think that really killed mainstream media.
Yes.
I think it sort of, well, exacerbated it. It was already on its way out. But I think, you know, big corporations will use media, whether it's right or left. They don't care. They're going to buy your space and they're going to use it. Politicians will use media. They do care if it's right or left. But what's happened is they're both trying to use it at the same time. And the politicians are swarming it with illogical nonsense. And then these pharma companies are promoting everything. And they're basically now the politicians are saying, go to big pharma, even though we're promoting them on our media channels, and this will get you out of this mess.
Yeah.
So now it just became so obvious to everybody that everyone's turning to these other channels, you know, Sergio's, the Joe Rogans, stuff like that I'm putting out. And that's going to continue moving forward. I think if you people want to make a difference, now's the time to get into your own personal media channels.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
They're going to blow up in the next 3 to 5 years.
Do your own research.
Well, I think there's been a major effort to control the media and how much information gets to the American public about all sorts of things. If you look at the Epstein case, you're only allowed to talk about his sex crimes from 2000 to 2006. Don't look at his financial crimes or any of the thing he did before the year 2000 is, you know, pretty much how mainstream media handles the case. And that's pretty, you know, there's a lot to find if you go back farther.
So when you're looking, let's just look at Epstein for a second. When you're looking at his circle of influence, he is somebody who's kind of recruiting, just getting people on tape doing horrible things or raising money so they're in the pocket, right? Is that kind of his role? I
think that's part of it, but at the same time, you know, he's doing a lot of that. He's also involved in financial crimes pretty much throughout his career. I mean, that's the common thread from Epstein from the 70s until his second arrest.
But they would know that if he was working as an operation, that would kind of be overlooked.
I think it was known. I mean, even in January 2020, you have John McCain's wife, Cindy McCain, saying, we all knew what Epstein was doing.
Right.
And this is the wife of a senator with no direct connection to the Epstein scandal. So that means top people in our Congress and Senate knew what Epstein was up to, and nothing was done. And so does that, I mean, is there a big body count?
Is there a big body count? Big body?
They're coming for every second of your life. That's what these companies are coming to. This company as well. And it's not because anyone is bad. It's not because anyone in this company has evil plans or is trying to do this. They're not even doing it consciously. It's because these companies like Twitter and YouTube and Instagram and everything, they went public and they went to shareholders. So they have to grow. Their entire models are based off of growth. They cannot stay stagnant. Twitter grossed $4 or $5 billion last year. It is in the red. It is unprofitable. It has to get more of you. That could be the ceiling for a place like this. YouTube, the ceiling could be 3 hours of engagement. No matter how nice it's trying to be, it is all that they're trying to get more engagement from you. We used to colonize land. That was the thing you could expand into, and that's where money was to be made. We colonized the entire earth. There was no other place for the businesses and capitalism to expand into, and then they realized human attention. They are now trying to colonize every minute of your life. That is what these people are trying to do.
This is going to be interesting right here.
We used to talk about the media being in the hip pocket of big business and being controlled by big business. Well, today, the major media are big business. They are part of these multinational, huge corporations. And if you think they don't control what comes into that camera lens and out on that TV screen, well, come on. If I own you, I control you. If I pay you, I tell you what to say and what not to say. And when you look at the news today, I'm talking now about a national network newscast. The similarities between, think about this, Christoph, the similarities between a national network newscast and what used to be a local newscast are astounding. Local crime stories become national news stories. Not because of anything extraordinary about that, but that's the stuff that they're feeding out there. They don't feed pieces that talk about the fundamental relationships of power.
Yeah.
It is coming apart fast.
Yeah, man.
Ever since 2020, mainstream media is falling apart at a record pace. Their numbers are down, but they still have big advertisers. Golden Globe Awards, Grammy Awards, all these big celebrity events. I never watched them, but a lot of people, are enamored with these type of award ceremonies and the lives of celebrities, and nobody watches it anymore. NBA down, NFL down, MLB down. All the late night shows, numbers are down.
That is definitely true. That is definitely true.
If you don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed. If you do read it, you're misinformed.
What do you do?
What is the long-term effect of too much information? One of the effects is the need to be first, not even to be true anymore. So what a responsibility you all have to tell the truth. We live in a society now where it's just first. Who cares? Get it out there. We don't care who it hurts. We don't care who we destroy. We don't care if it's true. Just say it. Sell it. Anything you practice, you'll get good at, including BS.
Hey, he was on it. He was on it with that.
Why do you think Snapchat exists? Why do you think they would make a company for 13-year-olds where a photo disappears after 24 hours? Why do you think kids would want to use that? I've been to Silicon Valley. There are buildings full of 300 people who are all employed to give children what they want, not what they need. The base interests of children's wants. Because before, you wanted to get to a kid, you had to appeal to their parents, because their parents would turn the television off. So if you wanted to make a program for a kid, it had to appeal to their parents, because their parents were in control of the media they consumed. The kids have direct access to it now, so it doesn't matter. And there's an entire dialogue happening between these tech companies and kids that parents are completely unaware of.
Jeez.
8 years of nonstop lying by the Daily Beast and Rolling Stone and NBC News and CNN and MSNBC and all the rest about really big things like life and death things, insurrections and potential nuclear wars and
the Russian collusion hoax.
Kills. Exactly.
I mean, if somebody's purveying misinformation, Tucker, why aren't those other networks getting letters sent about that?
Well, that is sort of the question.
Why aren't they getting kicked off for misinformation? Thank you. That's my first question. If we said something y'all said was misinformation, then I can point to, as you just said, probably 10 or a dozen major stories that CNN, MSNBC, and others have lied or falsely reported about over the last, since 2015-16, since Trump came on the scene.
Oh, yeah.
That was a great question.
The idea is that if you have a society in which the voice of the people is heard, you got to make sure that that voice says the right thing. In totalitarian societies, it's not a big problem. You got a club in your hand, and if people don't behave the right way, you hit them with a club or threaten them with it. So it doesn't really matter much what they think. What matters is what they do, and that you control by force. But as the capacity of the state to control by force erodes, it's necessary to control what people think. And in fact, I think you find much more sophisticated concern for thought control precisely as the society becomes more free. I don't think it's surprising that the sophisticated discussion, things like the public relations industry and the academic side of it and the journalistic side and all these kinds of things I've been sampling, I suspect if one did a comparative study, you'd find that they develop primarily in relatively free societies.
Propaganda at its finest.
People who can critically think and who can listen to the evidence of their eyes and their ears have been warning about this for years and were labelled crackpot conspiracy theorists. Look at this in the mainstream media now. The mission to dim the sun. How controversial geoengineering technique could cool the planet using existing aircraft. People have been pointing this stuff out for years, pointing up to the evidence in the sky. Mainstream media was lambasting every single person who talked about this as a conspiracy theorist. And if you Google sky spray, it'll come up, chemtrails conspiracy theory gets put to the ultimate test. If you Google it, it comes up on Wikipedia. Wikipedia need to update their page now, by the way, but there's a chemtrail conspiracy theory apparently on Wikipedia, and you can read all about it. Screenshot that. Here's on the BBC's website, chemtrails. What's the truth behind the conspiracy theory? These people are crackpots and nutters, right? And it goes on and on and on with press releases. You can find this stuff on Google. But now, in order to combat climate change, the mission to dim the sun, the controversial geoengineering technique, could cool the planet using existing aircraft spraying the skies. So what's out there and what is available for people to see with their eyes and ears, people have been warning about. But what happens is there's too many people that are aware of this stuff now, and they're starting now to release what they're doing in the mainstream media. But isn't it interesting? Solar panels all over the place, and what do solar panels use to produce electricity? The sun. And now they're going to dim the sun? I don't know. Is it to combat cow farts? Is it to combat temperature change? Is it to combat the rising sea levels or the hole in the ozone layer? I don't know. But isn't it interesting that conspiracy theorists these days, or conspiracy theories, just are simply spoiler alerts 2 to 3 years ahead of what's announced in the media. Eyes and ears open as always. Share your experiences. Eyes and ears open. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yo, if y'all into that, I got a whole TikTok compilation on chemtrails and weather augmentation. So it's out there, and it's very interesting. So if y'all into that, I definitely got a compilation on that, and it's something.
Means you can't rely on the media as it is today either.
Oh, of course not. All the media in this country, radio, television, and print, is all owned by 5 corporations. All of these corporations that own the media are owned and controlled. Members of the Council on Foreign Relations sit on their board of directors. You can trace that yourself. Okay. Remember, if you go down and you trace the ownership of a station or a newspaper, you get to a corporation. Remember that somebody owns that corporation, and it's usually another corporation. You trace the interlocking of all these things. We get to the top. There's 5. All journalists know that there's some things you don't write about, you don't talk about, because you'll lose your job. That's where the control is. That's why they pay anchormen like Dan Rather $1 trillion a year.
Of course.
Paso, Las Cruces communities, Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
we are concerned about trouble trying to plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and false
news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media
this is fucking scary. Yeah, this is the scariest.
Well, that's propaganda. I mean, this is they're trying to bend a narrative in a very specific way for everybody, and they're warning you about something that's a legitimate concern, false information. But they're also spreading it all the time. So it's like what they're saying is not.
I remember that video. That video was crazy.
The media generally, and I say this as a reformed journalist, the media gives us a very toxic view of the world. Most of the news we get is about disaster, threats, horrible things happening to people. It's news for the amygdala. The amygdala is a very primitive part of the brain that wants to know what are the dangers. However, if we were to take on any given day all of the acts of kindness performed around the globe, you know, a mom feeding her kid is an act of kindness. And we were to put it on one scale, and then we'd take all the atrocious acts and put them on another scale, the acts of kindness would far outweigh those of meanness. But we don't get that sense of the world looking through a media lens.
That is definitely true.
Project Mockingbird was the project of the deep state to control us via the media. But it worked much better in an era where there were 3 broadcast networks. You didn't have to control that many properties. The reason that the narrative broke was because Goliath was focused on controlling the mainstream media properties, and it didn't think it had to care about the off Joe Rogan man cave stuff. Why should it care what a podcast was? Who cares what gets said on pirate radio, right? But that mattered a lot because people, when they realized they were being lied to and they were doing harm to themselves because of those lies, tuned out the mainstream media and they started searching for information elsewhere. The punchline is, if you want to beat the deep state, what you need to do is you need to drag Goliath onto territory he doesn't understand. That's where we win.
When I will immediately bring prices down starting on day one.
That ain't true. That's what you just heard. Since day one of Donald Trump's presidency, prices are not down.
Prices down starting on day one.
That ain't true. That's what you just heard. Since day one.
Prices down starting on day one.
That ain't true. That's what you just heard. Since
What?
day one of Donald Trump's presidency, prices are not down. They're up. Inflation is getting worse.
I win, I will immediately bring prices down starting on day one.
Did you see the thing that's going around today of the 22 different mainstream news sites all parroting the exact same thing? And
well, not just that, all the Congress people.
Yeah.
Did you see that? They're all saying the exact same thing.
I guess it's Congress people, not news anchors. It's just that now everyone is a...
It's fucking Pelosi and Schumer and all these different people. There's 12 of them now that they've got saying the exact same script.
Oh, it's more than 12. Alex Jones had a full 22 on his show, so they kept adding to it. At first, it was 2 of them early in the morning.
They're so dumb. They all read the same script. They're so dumb.
But they use a different tone of voice.
This is crazy.
I was warned by a CIA guy in 1991. He said, if you tell the whole story here, the truth, it will discredit you because it's more bizarre than the fiction they're selling to the public. And that is true. An insane amount of disinformation. But remember, if you have technologies like that, and you have the malicious intent to deceive the public or officials, you can do all kinds of skullduggery, and they have. This long game has always been to blend enough information with disinformation that the disinformation is believable, but then gaslight people that there's some threat out there. I'm going, oh yeah, I'll tell you who the threat is. It's humans. Humans are a threat not only to ourselves, we've become a threat out in space.
This video proves how deeply we were all affected by media propaganda. Just listen to what this guy says about these 2 circles.
These 2 circles are not equal. I repeat, these 2 circles are not equal. One is in fact larger than the other. What I need you to do is determine which one that is. So, please raise your hand if you believe the blue circle is larger than the red. All right? Please raise your hand if you believe the red circle is larger than the blue. All right, very good. Now, before I said anything about these 2 circles, what was your first instinct? Equal, right? Because they look equal. And the reason why they look equal is because, in fact, they are equal. These 2 circles are identical. Yet I got just about every one of you to raise your hand and say that they're not. So what did we learn? That you can be manipulated like that to believe in something that goes against your natural instincts. As a child, you're taught that the blue circle is larger than the red. If you say it enough times, you convince yourself that's the truth. If you're told the lie enough times, it becomes part of your reality.
We all done heard that. We all done heard that.
Let me show you why nobody trusts the media. The last couple years, a lot of us have lived through a little something called inflation, where everything has gotten more expensive. And naturally, we want to figure out why. A lot of us had this gut feeling that it was corporate greed, corporations raising their prices and ripping us off, aka greedflation. Now, in response to this theory, the mainstream media deemed greedflation to be fake, nonsense, a witch hunt, even a conspiracy theory. And then the tapes came out where a bunch of CEOs were caught on tape bragging about raising prices just because they could.
We want to make sure that we're not leaving any pricing on the table. We'll take as much pricing as the consumer can absorb.
And we know if we need to take more pricing, we have room to do it. To date, we've seen no resistance from our customers.
I'm really pleased our sales teams have gotten much better at pricing than ever in the history of the company. We're not going to be giving this pricing back. Now it's not a matter of can we take a price increase. Now it's about how much of a price increase are you going to take.
Uh-oh, what are they going to say now? You're not going to believe this, but not only is greedflation not a conspiracy anymore, it is real and probably a good thing for the economy, says the Wall Street Journal.
What?
My point is, how can we possibly trust the mainstream media if time and time again they've shown that their main priority is not necessarily to report the real news, it's to protect their corporate donors?
People under 30 believe social media at the same level that they believe mainstream media, and that, to my knowledge, has never happened before.
People say the most extraordinary things in order to draw attention to themselves. We're seeing the fragmentation of the media. There's a book written a long time ago by Daniel Borston, who was the Librarian of Congress, the pseudo-event American Politics, and he's talking about the 1950s and 60s, and he's talking about the creation of things, the purpose of attracting attention. That was when we were talking about PR agents and stunts for local news, and now we're talking about social media influencers attempting to gain attention for themselves in order to monetize it.
What happens with mainstream media channels going forward?
And we don't have a rule book. We don't have editors. We don't have fact checkers. We've got, somebody going on and saying, what is the most extraordinarily wild thing that I can say that will attract me more viewers, more listeners? Yeah. I can't forecast it. I'm trying to figure it out.
Shit is different. It's different now.
Yeah, remember, the media is controlled by 95% of the media is controlled by 6 corporations. How could you possibly, in the midst of that kind of control, expect fairness?
They hear 6 companies control all the media. Okay, you could sit down, you could analyze that, and you obviously can come to the conclusion that, of course, big companies that big that spend that much money on lobbying, they wouldn't just allow their news station to say whatever they want. So they're just like, well, let's, they assume that because companies are competing against each other, they can't, they're all like, someone's telling the truth.
The work of politics is to make the corruption of power visible, and to argue that you don't have a democracy when 6 companies control the media.
Did you know that there are 6 companies that own almost all of the media in the world? We'll start this off with National Amusements. These are all of their media assets. They have other assets as well, but we're only going to focus on media. The next company is Disney, which is no surprise, and this is all of their media assets. And here's another one of those 6 companies, Time Warner. Next up on the list is Comcast with all of their media assets. Here's another one, News Corp. And of course, we can't forget about Sony. Also, there's a company called the Sinclair Broadcast Group, and according to a report in 2023, they own 223 television stations across the US. And guess who the largest shareholder is in the Sinclair Broadcast Group? It's BlackRock. And BlackRock is also a large shareholder in all 6 of the companies that own almost all of the media in the world. If we just follow the money, I think we can see what's really going on behind the scenes.
It's not collapsing, but boy, it's in a weird state of this strange struggle where people kind of forgot we're all supposed to be united, and that's our strength. And being divided the way we're being divided, especially being divided by bullshit. You shouldn't be allowed to lie. And you shouldn't be allowed to lie in a campaign ad.
Right.
You shouldn't be allowed to use CGI to make your crowds look bigger. You shouldn't be allowed. You shouldn't be allowed to do any of these things. And we're allowing it, and it's having this tremendous impact on the way people see the news. The news is so filtered. Everything in this country that's in mainstream news, you have to follow a certain set of rules in order to be able to get information out. And if you want to talk about the campaigns, and if you want to talk about the war, and if you want to talk about what's going on in Ukraine and what's going on in Gaza, you have to have very specific narratives. And you're not allowed to deviate from that at all. And then that's what's giving you the news. And so we're all like, what the fuck is real?
Right.
And so anytime anything happens, even when the president gets shot, we're like, was that even real? We don't think anything's real anymore. And
Absolutely.
That's what primes us for the Matrix. Don't let corporations tell you what's true. They're not going to tell you what's true if they don't have to.
Yeah.
If they can get away with not telling you, if they make more money, if they don't tell you, you can't have that. That's not how you get your news. You can't have that because it's just too easy to manipulate.
So easy to manipulate.
Insiders trading is illegal, but that's legal. That's legal? You can manipulate the news? Like what? You can have certain companies can advertise on the news, and then you'll never criticize those companies? That seems weird. That seems weird.
Joe Rogan on it.
If you look at the carbon footprint of the advertising industry, it's now double global aviation, right? Which when you tell people, it's like, well, then you look at the inefficiencies of the actual agency ad world, and of all the content shot, only 3% ever make it out to the consumers. So you think of the wastage
that
in
can't
money,
be right.
Yeah, money, carbon footprint. You think they go away and film for a week? We used to do it. We used to go and film for a week, and it makes a 1-minute film. The amount of content being shot, which equates to a huge carbon footprint but huge cost, and actually what the world see. So we're there challenging. We're not telling brands to slow down on the way they market and the way they put content out. We're telling them to think about it in a different way.
Wow, that was crazy.
The Great Reset is actually the name of a book by a very prominent advocate of it. His name is Klaus Schwab. He sent me a copy. I guess he sent one to probably every government leader around the world.
In a speech to the UN, you use this phrase, the Great Reset. It comes from the name of a book by the founder of the Economic Forum in Davos, a guy named Klaus Schwab. Just tell us, finally, what you meant when you said the Great Reset. What is it?
I didn't say Great Reset.
This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset.
The crisis provides an opportunity for a reset.
And the disruption is an opportunity for us to reset.
But the tragedy has also given us an unexpected opportunity for a reset.
An unprecedented opportunity to rethink and reset the ways in which we live and do business.
This is a time for a great reset.
We go for a great reset.
Yo.
I used to work for Vice, the media company once famed for its balls-to-the-wall style of gonzo journalism.
I'm in a presidential rally here in the Philippines.
This is the thing right now. I'm in Belgravia in West London. Which is now essentially a propaganda vehicle for Saudi Arabia.
What the fuck?
Let me explain. In 2018, Vice was struggling financially, and Saudi Arabia had a PR problem. Vice founder Shane Smith met Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman on a luxury yacht in the Red Sea. They discussed building an international media empire to remake the kingdom's image in the West. Vice then signed a contract with a Saudi publishing group to make a series of documentaries aimed at promoting Saudi Arabia.
And Saudi Arabia is going to adapt from the closed, conservative place it's known as.
In 2020, Vice Media secretly organized a Saudi-sponsored music and culture festival in the desert. And this year, the company opened an office in Riyadh's new cultural district. Meanwhile, Vice's financial situation has gotten worse. In May, it filed for bankruptcy. I spoke to some journalists who are still working there, and things are pretty dire. The company's dealings with Saudi are now affecting its news output. It has repeatedly censored its own stories that are critical of Saudi Arabia, citing security concerns, including a report about a Saudi woman who was imprisoned for 30 years for protesting, and a documentary critical of Mohammed bin Salman, which Vice uploaded and then quickly removed. Last month, it scrapped a story about expatriate transgender Saudis who fear for their lives. And a former Vice worker told me that the company had downplayed the risks to LGBTQ+ staff working in the country, where homosexuality is illegal. Despite all of this, the Saudi arm of the company seems to be getting bigger and bigger. The company is advertising for loads of jobs in Riyadh. Vice Jax now has a large desk in the company's office in East London, which is really weird for the journalists working there. As one former Vice staff member told me, haters will hate, but it was always the dream for Vice to become an in-flight magazine for a regime that dismembers journalists. Right?
From my point of view, you feel like that's what threatens old media, so to speak, because you can, LeBron can go sit down and clear shit up that you've been saying about him all of this time with unlimited, like he just launched his podcast again. Like, do you think that threatens old media now, where with us having the microphones opposed to them?
Yes, I mean we have threatened the way. Like, if you haven't paid attention, like they're canceling shows, right? Some of these guys, like, I mean, what they lay off, like how many ESPN back in the day, like Jalen,
there's a lot of
Because what happens is the consumer can go right to the player themselves.
Yeah.
You've been in the belly of the beast. You worked at CNN, you worked at MSNBC, of course you worked at Fox as well. Do you see a massive disconnect between the mainstream media and what alternative media is able to cover these days?
I just think it's dying, and the audience numbers show it. Just as a viewer, it's very boring. It's boring for a specific reason. So if the whole point of my telling you this is to convince you of something specific, I have to keep repeating it endlessly. I can't sort of veer off into something I find interesting, like how'd they build the pyramids? Because my job is to convince you that Zelensky is Churchill. And so that's all I'm going to talk about. And so they wind up repeating like the same 4 stories forever.
Yeah, that's the news. That is definitely the news for you.
Is this the end of mainstream media? Are we seeing its demise right now?
Yes. We're living in the end times. For corporate media, I guess we'll call it. They're not mainstream. Is it mainstream to go out there every day and say that guys should be allowed to punch women in the face at the Olympics and pretend they're women? That's not mainstream. You and I are the mainstream. They're not. Is it mainstream to say open the borders? I hate that term because it's a misnomer. But yes, we're living through the end times for them, which is a glorious thing. We should be celebrating that. That's one of the few great things we have to think about right now in public life. That and the Supreme Court are the 2 things I wrap myself in like a blanket when I go to bed at night.
What do you think the final nail in the coffin will be?
If Trump wins again.
That'll be the end.
Yes, because they'll do the same thing they did the first time.
Well, he definitely won again.
There's a big debate amongst media experts. They're like, well, Fox News is a machine. And do you think that they're still going to retain a lot of the power that they still have?
Oh, no, I think they're done. For a couple of reasons. One is business related. I don't think the model works. It's too expensive. I don't think NBC News will be here in 10 years. I'd bet my car on it. But I also think, not to be preachy, they devalued their own currency by lying too much. You know, people lie, they shade the truth, they withhold things. I mean, that's just like part of the human condition. But you can't be just like a flat out propaganda organization for like Pfizer, because it's just too obvious. And when people figure out that that's what you are, they don't trust you. And in a world with choices, they will choose not to believe you, and then they will choose not to watch you. And the numbers show that that's happening.
That is definitely, people got choices.
At what point did the overwhelming majority of journalists become more loyal to the CIA than to their readers?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, my father was a journalist in Tokyo in the 1960s, and he said it was crawling with spies then. So journalism, especially in the Cold War, was full of spies back then. I mean, your dad would know as well because he was a journalist in that era. Journalism and spies were good friends and great sources, and also kind of interchangeable in some ways. So maybe nothing has changed.
Well, I think that's actually fair now that you're saying it out loud. I think that is, in fact, I think I know for a fact that that's true. So you're right.
We used to think that they were on the side of the angels. They were promoting truth, justice, and the American way, and that was a good thing. I think they've turned.
Man, this media stuff, man.
There's nothing special about being a journalist anymore.
No.
Essentially.
It's fascinating how quickly all of that just hit almost rock bottom.
Oh, yeah, man. It's unbelievably fast. Well, that just shows you how powerful the technologies are. But, I think as the traditional media dies, they get desperate for attention. They get all clickbaity. So they exaggerate the polarization and the catastrophe. The best example of that is there's way more coverage of violent crime than there was 25 years ago. But there's half as much violent crime.
The interesting thing that I think I enjoy about podcasts, and a lot of audiences do as well, is that unscripted nature.
I was interviewed by a Wall Street journalist last week. I asked him what he liked about podcasts because he listened to them a lot. And he said, I really like to see where they're going. And I thought, yeah, that's exactly it. Because in a legacy media interview, everything is scripted and you're never talking to a person. You're talking to the corporation, essentially. And I'm not being cynical about that. But now you can sit down with someone and you can risk exploration. That's what Joe Rogan has been doing so well for so many years. You can have two people having a genuine discussion about a complex issue, so they can model high quality dialectical thinking and pull people along on an exploratory journey and make it permanent. And that's completely revolutionary. And the possibilities are limitless. The next thing is you can take those conversations and you can chop them up into 30-second pieces, and each of those can find a specialized home that can attract millions of views.
That is definitely true, for sure.
Social media is dead. Media is all that's left. Let me explain. Right now, as you're scrolling on here, probably a lot of the people, if you're anything like me, are people that I don't actually know socially. And so what's happened, especially on like the Instagrams and the YouTubes, etc., people aren't sending pictures of their food and their vacation that they want on, or some people are, but those aren't the people who have the big following. It's the people that are just creating valuable content, which means that they went from being social or personal media to just media. And so if we think about that evolution over time, we can think about how we adjust the content that we create in order to sell stuff, build our audiences, etc.
That was a great breakdown.
You briefed the press, did you not, when you were there?
Well, I had several jobs. One of my jobs was that of analyst. I also was an interrogator and indeed briefed the press when we, the CIA, wanted to circulate disinformation on a particular issue. Disinformation is not necessarily a lie. It may be a half-truth. And we would pick out a journalist.
Then what the fuck is it? What is a half-truth? In the comments. What is a half-truth then? Can somebody please let me know in the comments, please? I'm begging you guys. If it's not a lie, it's a half-truth, then what is the difference? Can somebody just let me know in the comments? Fill me in. Maybe I'm just slow on that. Let me know.
Would go do the briefing and hope that he would put the information in print. For instance, if we wanted to get across to the American public that the North Vietnamese were building up their force structure in South Vietnam, I would go to a journalist and advise him that in the past 6 months, X number of North Vietnamese forces had come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail system through southern Laos. Now, there is no way a journalist can check that information. So either he goes with the information or he doesn't, and ordinarily or usually the journalist would go with it because it looked like some kind of exclusive. And I would say our percentage planning that kind of data was 70 to 80%. The correspondents we targeted were those who had terrific influence, the most respected journalists in Saigon, like Robert Chaplin of the New Yorker magazine, Kai's Beach of the Los Angeles Times from time to time, and also he worked for the Chicago Daily News. Bud Merrick of U.S. News and World Report, Malcolm Brown of the New York Times, even Maynard Parker of Newsweek magazine. We would go after these gentlemen. I would be directed to cultivate them, to spend time with them at the Caravel Hotel or the Continental Hotel, to socialize with them, and slowly but surely to try to gain their confidence by dolloping out valid information which was true. And then I would drop into a conversation the data that we wanted to get across, which might not be true. One piece of data, for instance, that we managed to plan in.
So is that not a lie? Is that not a lie? Am I tripping? Am I tripping? Am I in the Matrix, y'all?
New Yorker magazine had to do with a supposed North Vietnamese effort in 1973 to develop airfields along the border of South Vietnam. The reason we wanted to plant this information was that we were trying to persuade the U.S. Congress that Saigon should continue to get a great deal of aid, and that the North Vietnamese were the chief violators of the ceasefire accord. That was printed in the New Yorker magazine under the byline of Robert Chaplin, as indeed was a great deal of such information which we tried to circulate. If I planted a piece of information with a reporter, I would ordinarily then try to create an environment in which he could not check the information. I would go to the British ambassador and brief him on the disinformation I had just given the reporter. So when the reporter wanted to cross-check what I'd told him with, say, the British ambassador, New Zealand ambassador, or what have you, he would get false confirmation, the same message coming back at him, and he'd say, aha, I've got proof that Frank Snepp told me the truth, when in fact what he'd gotten was simply an echo of what I'd given him in the first place via the British ambassador or other of our friendly diplomatic contacts. I am, as an ex-CIA agent, opposed to the disinformation activities in which I was involved.
Wow.
I admit that I was involved, and I think it served no useful purpose. Propagandizing the American public or Congress is not the CIA's job.
Wow. Wow.
Television's dying. Television used to be where you went to put your money. If you want to advertise to older people, this is still good, especially for news channels. I would assume that Fox News has to have some of the highest sales numbers for ads. They're the one large one that's kind of leans to the conservatives. Streaming services, they don't want you to watch ads. They want you to pay. There's no loyalty, so there's no incentive for people to watch or listen to the ad. The ad comes on and they get up to go get a drink or they, whatever. Edited videos. This is where it has been. Because YouTube has spent so much money on building the algorithm for advertising everything, they can do targeted advertising. So companies will pay big bucks. There's kind of an attachment there, and there's kind of a bond, but also it's targeted. Live streaming, on the other hand, is very difficult for advertisers right now because they don't know exactly how to advertise because it's hit or miss. The problem is that they just can't get it in front of targeted audiences yet. In the future, as this starts to get more honed in on the specifics of advertising and whatnot, this could be the most lucrative. But right now it's not, because it is a gamble for a lot of these companies because nobody knows how to advertise.
An article about CNN. This is fascinating. How many views do you think CNN got in prime time for 1 week, 3-hour segments every day, prime time for 1 week in May? What do you think?
One show.
One show, 3 hours for a week.
The cumulative of 3-hour show.
Correct.
5 million maybe? I don't know.
83,000.
That's crazy.
Lowest level of all time.
What?
Fox, the highest, was 186,000. Think about what is happening right in front of us. The media is no longer actually reaching the masses because they've lost complete trust with them. In fact, 30-year-olds right now, for the first time ever, 30-year-olds have more trust in you, social media influencers, than they do the mainstream media. It's not the same for all age groups. But that is what I am seeing right in front of us, is we're like, show me what's real, because I do not trust puppets who parrot things from teleprompters. They know that you and I are having a real conversation. There's no teleprompter in sight. When you look at your notes, you look at your notes. It's real. And I think that is what I'm realizing with our message. We have to be honest, because nobody trusts anybody right now.
Ooh. Ooh-wee.
We're popping YouTubers at the time, and then we get this TV deal after doing some pilots. You're familiar with TV, traditional media. See, it's called traditional media now, like a bygone era where you got mad cameras. The lights are huge. These cameras are this big to shoot food. How do you shoot your food? Phone. Yeah. We're filming, but we got a showrunner, a producer. We got kind of someone that's like, hey, can you say this brisket ramen in Denver cooked by this guy is like the best you've ever had? My brother's like, no, I'm not saying that. There is some tension because not that they're trying to feed us scripted lines, but there are things that they want us to say that we're just not authentic. And we were YouTubers at the time. So we're like, let us be us.
Right.
Let us have this banter. Let us talk about all these little cultural things that we know about this food. And they're just like, we're probably going to get cut out in the edit because we got to move fast because, you know, there's a schedule and you have to move the art. We finish it. But at the end of the day, what the show turned out to be, and if you watch the episodes and you watch us now, you're going to be like, okay, this is pretty different.
It was like when Jen got the Rough Riders deal. Y'all thought that was the thing, but the label wanted it to mold it to a certain angle.
To think that if you get a TV show, that's your dream.
Right.
But I think we just learned a lot from that show, you know, and it did make us appreciate YouTube more.
So looking back on all the drama, do you think that legacy media played a role in what happened to you?
Look, I think they're trying to do their best to stay relevant. Look, platforms like X, I mean, you move information around so quick that everybody else is just playing catch up. Legacy media's diligence has turned out to be they just cut and paste what some trusted outlet does. I mean, look, this will be a good example. Watch how they report on this conversation. There'll be 1 or 2 headlines that get repeated over and over and over. I think actually if legacy media wants to survive, they're going to have to start slowing down.
That's smart. I agree with that. By the way, do you watch Netflix anymore?
Probably as much as you watch Fox.
So that doesn't mean that you're gone though from Netflix. I don't even know if you're aware of this, but every time a person pulls up the Netflix app, you're there in some way. Have you seen this?
Yes, you know what that is? Boom, boom. So it is bizarre that they decided to publicly cut ties with me on allegations alone, allegations that have now been proven false, because I don't think there's any question. Netflix exists because of me. I put them on the map, and they tried to put me in the ground.
It just feels so fake when, like,
it still does.
When you read in a voice that is totally how other humans communicate, and most of the time, like, are they even reading something they wrote, or does someone in the back room write it, and this is the first time they're seeing it? And then when you know that there's, like, certain angles of what they can and can't say, that they're steering it in a certain direction, they just have lost all public trust.
Facts.
And in some ways, I'm glad they did, because it opened up doors for guys that have, like me, that have no credentials. I don't have a journalism background. I'm totally untrained. So is my entire crew. Like my camera guy jumped in from music videos. My other guy jumped in from real estate. And here we are putting together YouTube documentary journalism.
It's a terrible format.
That's dope.
I mean, mainstream media has always been hampered by the fact they have ads every 7 minutes. It's always been every conversation is only allowed to have a certain amount of depth to it, because you can't expand on things. You can, if you have like something very complicated to discuss, you need to let someone talk without any interruption, and then there needs to be some back and forth. That takes time. It takes a long time for someone to clearly establish, when you're talking about the facts of a very important piece of policy or a very important situation that's going on in America, like say the border crisis. You can't talk about the border crisis in 5 minutes. It's super complicated. You can't talk about Title 42 in 40 minutes. You can't talk about any of these things in a short amount of time. You need hours. You need to be able to expand for hours and not be interrupted by commercial breaks. But they're hampered by that model. It's always going to be, and then they're also hampered by the fact that you don't get individual, unique voices and perspectives. You get narrative-driven, policy-driven, ideologically driven hosts who they're contained by whatever system that they're a part of. They're contained by their executives and the producers and the people behind the scenes.
New York Times used to be like the main reputable, honest news source.
That's a big editorial.
It's unbelievable how blatantly obvious they are about their agenda.
Yep.
So this first one is titled, "Are private messaging apps the next misinformation hotspot?" Signal and Telegram, these are texting apps, but it makes it so no one else can see what you're saying except you two.
I love it. That's the way it should be.
The New York Times is literally saying information that we cannot see should not be allowed.
It's exact same fucking thing that they want to take away your freedoms and your First Amendment rights, because they want to pick and choose what works for their fucking ideology and allow that to go on. For example, when I said the thing about Pelosi, that was taken down. But when I say the same thing about Trump, that's been up forever. The point is, if they pick and choose what they want, what works with their fucking platform, so it's not freedom of speech, it's nothing more than an editorial or what supports their position.
The mainstream media has already lost. This is an article from The Atlantic, and it basically just outlines how, the media landscape has really shifted in the past couple years, with traditional outlets like newspapers or big TV networks really losing their kind of dominant positioning that they've had, and losing it to independent content creators. In this, they obviously name drop Joe Rogan, as he's a person that seemed to have quite large influence in the just recent US election. But I think what this article does is it does a good job of explaining that it's not really a difference in reach that's kind of building this gap between traditional media and these new kind of media personalities and outlets. It's about authenticity and trust. And people like Joe Rogan or Elon Musk even have capitalized on the widespread distrust in institutional media. Overall, the future of journalism looks quite bleak, as these new age kind of media people are focusing more on entertainment and personality rather than policy, facts, or true, real journalism. And I mean, a big reason for that is these traditional mainstream outlets have really failed to adapt to this evolving digital landscape, allowing for, influencers and content creators to take the forefront in shaping public discourse. I think this really just highlights how fast the digital landscape is changing. Algorithms are putting us into echo chambers. We're gaining trust in some people and losing trust in other platforms. And overall, there just feels to be this huge divide happening across different platforms. Like a bunch of people leaving Twitter to go to Blue Sky. And I think what we really need actually is a lot more of a connection between these platforms, creating a seamless ecosystem. But I would love to hear what you guys think. Is there any saving the mainstream? And how have you seen these changes in the digital world kind of shape your perspectives and trust? Let us know in the comments. As always, everything we talk about in these videos can be found in our ARCA profile through the link in our bio. If you are looking for a place that you can curate and discover all different types of media and content, definitely sign up for the ARCA waitlist. You can also do that through the link in our bio.
Streaming is dead. That's what a Disney executive said to Tony Gilroy, the creator of the show Andor. And I can see why they're thinking that, because they're having a real problem, just like all the other studios, with finding profitability in this new era of streaming. Using Disney as an example, because I like to pick on them, if we go back to 2010, their net income for that year was about $4 billion, or about 5.5 adjusted for inflation. Fast forward to 2018, after acquiring 20th Century Fox, Marvel, Lucasfilm, their net income was $12.5 billion. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $15 billion. This was their peak. Now in 2024, the latest reports had them at just below $5 billion net income. And while Disney Plus has finally become profitable, it's just simply not enough to replace all the other revenue streams that streaming has tried to kill off. The content budgets for these shows have exploded. The reported budget for Andor Season 1 and Season 2 is $650 million. They're spending billions on new content, but subscribers are only paying between $7 to $15 a month to access all of that content. That's in stark contrast to people who would often pay $10 to $15 for a movie ticket, would pay $20, $25 for a Blu-ray or a DVD. This model requires constant investment in tons of money, but with subscriber churn and people turning on and off every month, it's almost impossible to make as serious a profit as they did in the days of home video and big theatrical releases. So you can already start to see the studios shifting gears. Disney, for example, canceling the Moana TV show and turning that into Moana 2, which was released theatrically. So streaming certainly changed the game for movies, and we may never go back to a day without it. But I think there is a shift coming where there's going to be more of a balance. Every egg has been in the streaming basket for the last 5 years, and I think you're going to see that start to shift back to larger theatrical windows, more importance and more emphasis on home video, DVD and Blu-ray sales, and of course rentals and video on demand, and other ways to make content that don't just rely on subscriptions, because they really lost billions and billions of dollars in this industry when they went and focused on streaming instead of all these great revenue streams that they decided to kill off.
My only thing about that is going back to the whole movie theater, theatrical releases type thing. I think people are kind of anti that. You know what I'm saying? They rather be at their house enjoying watching TV or watching whatever show they want to. A lot of people is kind of like anti-social. They would prefer to be in their own environment where they can control, where they feel safe, where they can watch and enjoy in the comfort of their own home with people that they love and cherish. I think the masses of people is not going to be running back to the movie theaters like that. Blu-rays and DVDs and renting. I think that's, don't get me wrong. People still do enjoy going to the movies and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? But I don't think en masse people are going to start doing that again. I think with the subscriptions and stuff, it's just too easy and too comforting to just be in your crib and just watch whatever you want. Let me know.
How about fuck you? Because everything that we called misinformation just a few years ago is now being fucking it's on the front page of the New York Times now that we were lied to. I mean, the New York Times just printed a thing. It turns out we were lied to. Yeah, you lied to us. Yeah. You were a part of it. Yep. You spit out all of their propaganda without doing what you're actually supposed to do, which is be a journalist.
Right. Yep.
No, the only way you can be a journalist today is if you're independent. A real journalist, you have to be a Glenn Greenwald. You have to be a Schellenberger. You have to be a Matt Taibbi. You have to be someone who's independent. That's the only way you could do real journalism today. There's just too many fucking guardrails.
Dude, Glenn Greenwald, who is debatably the greatest journalist of the 21st century, maybe I'd give it to Julian Assange, but he's up there. He had to leave the publication that he was a founder of. Yeah. You know, The Intercept.
anything was proven, it's that everybody knows that mainstream media is fake. They know that these people are delusional. They're pushing propaganda. They don't trust Hollywood. They don't trust the music industry. People have figured it out. You talking heads on mainstream media are fucking done. We are the media now, motherfuckers, not you. You guys are done. Now it's our time.
We are the captain now.
That's correct. Go home, go cry. Yeah. Lay in the fetal position in the fucking shower. I don't take it easy.
What musicians don't seem to realize is that social media is dead. Like, the idea of social media is a past era that we used to live in. We do not live in that now. Short form content, long form content, all that kind of stuff is just media. Some people say, like, view each platform like a television channel. I think it's a little bit different than that. View each platform like a network, and your profile is the channel. Every channel on television was kind of niched, right? If you wanted to watch sports, you watched ESPN. If you wanted to watch animals, you watched Animal Planet. If you wanted to increase your testosterone, you watched Spike TV. Every channel had its own little niche. You are the channel, you are the niche. People come to your channel for a very specific type of content. They initially come because of the format and the entertainment, and they stay long-term because of you and your personality and your brand. Most musicians are just struggling because they haven't quite figured out what the right format is to attract that initial audience. So you have to keep testing, but don't view this like social media anymore. You are basically putting out television programs on your channel, and you're a part of some big network. The best part is, unless you break the terms of service, they can't cancel your show, no matter how little of views it gets. So that's a golden opportunity for you to just try and test until you find what works. It took me a year straight of posting almost every day on TikTok to figure out how to do this efficiently. Hopefully this helps you as you go out there and you start posting more content to try to attract your fans, because you know the landscape that you're actually in.
My argument is that the way the algorithms are working, we no longer even live in social media. We now live in interest media. The things you're interested in are coming to you, not who you follow and what they post. So I would argue social media is fully dead. We're fully in interest media. And I would say the way that the AI algorithms are working is it's transcribing the words that are coming out of your mouth and putting in front of people who are likely to be interested in what you're talking about. So the deeper you go, it's really, this is a good one, it's really no different than prompt engineering. If you fucking put out shit, you're gonna fucking not attract anything. But if you really go there in depth, and it is not based on the surface level part, it's the words. It's the words. And so I would recommend everyone do it, because there's fundamentally little to no downside. The downside of making content on the internet is that 99% of the people in this room are insecure.
Ooh.
And people don't like to post when they're insecure because people don't like 3 views. People don't like "you're ugly" as a comment from an anonymous person on the internet. And so most of the people here will not achieve their upside in this medium because of their insecurities. And I asked them to stop being insecure because every other person on earth sucks at a lot of things too.
Right. Gary Vee is a legend.
Social media is designed to make us think, maybe I should be somewhere else, doing something else, with someone else. But if you always think that your happiness is somewhere else, it will never, ever be where you are. Social media bombards us with curated snapshots of others' lives, showcasing seemingly perfect moments that can just leave us yearning for more. We sometimes forget that happiness isn't a destination. It's a state of mind.
I agree.
It's about appreciating the here and the now.
Absolutely.
It's about finding joy in the simple pleasures. It's about embracing the beauty of the present. It's about realizing that the grass isn't always greener on the other side of the screen. In the grand tapestry of life, social media is just one thread. It can be a source of inspiration, connection, and expression, but it should never define our sense of self-worth or happiness. Ultimately, happiness is where you are, right here, right now.
I agree with him. Salute, bro.
If you look at Instagram, I can promise you now, you'll think that you need to move to Dubai. You need to believe that you're a millionaire by 21. If you're a female, you should be a size 8. And if you're a male, you should be chiseled, ripped, alpha male, you know, monk mode, Iman Ghazi. You should be absolutely killing it. And if you're not driving a Lambo by 21, you've failed, right? There's no point. You might as well give up. And if you're a female, you should be on a yacht somewhere in Dubai. That's what social media will tell you. That's not the reality. If you want all these luxuries, by the way, which are so irrelevant, all these materialistic things, it's not what it's about. Developing social depression and anxiety. I don't know whether any of you do in here, but some of you might have some form of anxiety where you start to go into a bit of a panic because you've been watching other people for so long. Maybe some of you here are questioning whether actually you're doing enough and if you're on the right track. Maybe some of you sitting here, and many of you might never admit it, by the way, because it's seen as a weakness, but some of you here might not want to admit that you get a bit of an anxious feeling in your chest because you've been watching other people and you're like, don't know what I'm doing. You've got time to figure it out. I mean, you're only young, but some of you might be suffering with that.
That's real. That's real.
The main disseminator of fake news is the mainstream media. Who beat the drum? Look, because look, if I say something wrong on social media, it's not really going to have much of an effect. When the BBC, which has an audience of millions, hundreds of millions around the world, beats the drums for a war in a place like Iraq, which is exactly what they did, what happens? A war happens. Millions die. A country is destroyed. Refugees, you know, they have to leave their homes. It causes upheaval. So when we hear fake news, forget about, and literally they've brainwashed us into thinking that this is such an issue that we have to clamp down on social media. It just means clamping down on alternative views. That's what it really means.
All right, guys, that was another TikTok compilation, man. If you made it this far, you a real one for real. Make sure you put that in the comments. This right here was very eye-opening, especially talking about how the mainstream media is dying and how it's shifting to a whole new world, essentially. And just thinking about how they said the biggest things for me was trust and authenticity. Those are two of the biggest things that I started my channel on. You know, saying at the end of every video, I say self-love and positivity. Those are things that I really live by. And those are things that I really stick to on a day-to-day basis and that I try to practice on a daily. So I wanted to also infuse in my channel some of me, you know what I'm saying? What was the things that I bring to the table, the things of my values and stuff like that. And I see people started to connect with that. But that was just me being honest and open about who I was and putting it out there and seeing like, cause I feel like honestly, now I'm about to go on a little rant. I feel like honestly, cause I started like the whole, I remember in 2016 is when I started the whole self-love thing. I had a podcast back in 2015 before. So this is over like 10 years ago. And I started the self-love thing in 2016 and it just grew from there. But it wasn't always popular back then with the whole self-love thing. Even the podcast, it wasn't even like talked about like that back then. But to see how it's grown and seeing how people has connected to the message and stuff like that, and seeing how it has changed certain people, and people have started drinking more water, people have started being more diligent about how they talk about themselves and how they view themselves and how they are trying to be more present about them loving themselves and being more intentional about it. It's beautiful to see. But to see this and to hear this, it's exciting to see because like they said, but like I do your own research, but a lot of the stuff was propaganda. You know what I'm saying? A lot of stuff that they was telling us in the news and stuff like that wasn't necessarily true. It was they had an agenda. And so to see now people are able to come up and put out real news essentially, and people got a place where they can go to and actually, you know, find out what's really going on in the world. I think it's beautiful. You know what I'm saying? I think it's dope to see. But anyway, I love you guys. You made it this far. You're a real one for real. Make sure you drop a comment on this video. I think it's very important. This was a very important video. And I love you guys, man. So till next time, man, self-love and positivity. Fire Squad, I got you when you know it.